Welcome back to the channel, y'all. Every great story starts at, well, the beginning. And in this video, we're going to go over one of our builds in our latest honor mode playthrough. I say honor mode, but this happened actually pretty early on. A 10 seems so low, but it's
Insolent fool!
Okay.
You wish to see godhood?
No.
I wish you to.
Oh no! There goes our run. I did not think that would happen. Holy shit. So more like a dishonor mode, but in this video we're going to go over our Swashbuckler Rogue, played by Astarion. This is going to be a step-by-step guide on what we did with Astarion starting in Act 1 with the leveling there, talk about the gear, and then move into Act 2, same thing, and then finish off with Act 3. So if this is your first time with the channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and let's get started. Now starting off, Act 1, when you go ahead and respec Astarion, because you do want to fix his ability points, you're going to be selecting Rogue. We don't have any other choices to make. Our ability spread, I want it something like this. Heavily focused on dexterity, but then charisma. It's not bad to put 16 points into that because of Swashbuckler. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we choose our subclass. Other than that, Constitution and then Wisdom, that's the way to go. Now actually, before we hit to level 2, we do pick up Sneak Attack at level 1, and this is the entire bread and butter of Rogue essentially. So we're going to do extra damage to enemies that we have advantage against, but this also works if we have another ally next to that enemy within 1.5 meters, and we have a melee version of this and also a range version. Now for our playthrough, I basically stuck to Astarion being just focused on melee. We're kind of putting an RP limitation on us. Not saying that we never use sneak attack range, but we are always trying to stay in melee range. With Astarion here, we also have Vampiric or Vampire Bite. I was going to call it Vampiric Bite, but this is a bonus action. This will heal us a little bit. It'll do damage, and it'll make Astarion happy. So that's always something, huh? All right, now let's move on to level 2. Now at level 2, we get a lot of options for our bonus action. This is one of the great things about rogues is that right off the bat, you have something to do with your action, obviously, but your bonus action, you have a lot of choices. And with Astarion here, again, because of his Vampire Bite, we have an offensive option for doing damage with our bonus action as well. But we also pick up Cunning Action, Hide, Cunning Action, Dash, and then Cunning Action, Disengage. All three of these are very useful depending on the situation, so this is just nice to kind of have in our toolkit. Obviously, this is going to let us hide with our bonus action, this is going to let us dash with our bonus action, and this is going to let us disengage with our bonus action. All three of these, really good. Let's move on to level 3. And at level 3, we get to pick up our subclass. We're going with the Swashbuckler. So, the subclass features we get: fancy footwork. If you make a melee attack against a target, that target can't make an opportunity attack against you for the rest of their turn, meaning we can go up there, hit an enemy, and we can run out. We don't have to use, say, like Cunning Action, Disengage. We get to do this all on our own without spending a bonus action. We also pick up Rakish Audacity, so +2 to our initiative, which is great. And then also, we no longer need advantage to trigger Sneak Attack as long as we are within that 1.5 meters and we don't have disadvantage. This makes Swashbuckler kind of like a duelist, which is really why I like them, because you don't have to focus so much on the sneaking aspect. Swashbuckler is meant to be kind of in the front line and fighting alongside something like a fighter or a paladin without, having to go into the shadows all the time. I really like Swashbuckler for this reason. That's level 3 out of the way. Let's move on to level 4. Now level 4 here, this is kind of where the Swashbuckler comes full circle very early on. We get our dirty tricks. We get Flick of the Wrist here, and we also get Sand Toss for melee. Now, what do these dirty tricks do? Well, they're a bonus action that do damage, but also if we score the hit, we get advantage on our next attack. So the idea is you open up with one of these dirty trick bonus actions and then follow it up with a rakish sneak attack, and sometimes our sneak attack will be triggered by these dirty tricks, meaning we just get to just swing regularly with our weapon there. Now, the one that we are mostly focused on is either Flick of the Wrist or Sand Toss here, because again, staying in that melee range. But Vicious Mockery here as a bonus action, pretty good too. This is why we put 16 into our charisma, because the spell save DC that it sets is based off of charisma for Vicious Mockery. So we don't want that to be at something like 10 or like a -1. It's a pretty good idea to invest that into something like our Swashbuckler here. Now, moving on to our feats, because we're level 4, we just went with ability improvement and we bumped our dexterity up to 18. by Act 1, at some point during Act 1, our dexterity, because we're taking ability improvement now, our dexterity is going to be at 20 because of the chest piece we're going to be wearing for most of the game. So at Act 1, having 20 dexterity, that's really strong. Now, moving on to level 5, we get something very simple, Uncanny Dodge. We use lightning fast reflexes to protect ourselves. When an attack hits you, you only take half damage. So it's kind of like having resistance to most attacks. Really good actually for survivability, especially if we're going to be in the front line. But let's go ahead. Let's move on to level 6. Now level 6, nothing major. We just kind of can change our skills around. I would be mostly focusing on something like sleight of hand for Astarion here. Although with our charisma being so high, he's not a bad face of the party either. But then you have to have Astarion as the face of your party, which is, you know, ugh. Anyways, going on to level 7. Level 7, this is kind of where you're going to finish up Act 1, level 6 or level 7, depending on how much side questing you do or those optional areas. We also get evasion here. Your agility lets you dodge out of the way of certain spells. So this is going to basically have us evade spell damage as well. So really, Swashbuckler here, we're really hard to kill, essentially. But that is Act 1 out of the way. Let's go ahead and talk about all the gear that we should be looking out for. And again, we're only going to go over the key pieces of gear that I would recommend if you're going to be making a swashbuckler like this. Now, when it comes to the gear for Act 1, I thought this list would be a little bit longer, but no, not really. The first thing that I think you need to look out for your swashbuckler is the Falar Eluve as your weapon. Now, you might be thinking a long sword. Shouldn't somebody with strength be using that? No. In Baldur's Gate 3, there are a couple long swords in the game that use finesse, meaning either your dexterity or your strength, whichever is higher, it's going to use that modifier. So in the case of Swashbuckler here, with dexterity, yes, Falar is amazing. And it's got a +1 enchantment. You get this very early on. It gives you a lot of options of what to do with your action here because of the melody. So you can either use the sing or the shriek feature here, depending on if you want to like buff up your allies or if you want to basically do more damage to your enemies that are in close by. And again, if we're in melee, this is a really great weapon. Now, when I would do that more traditional swap where you're going to have, say, like a short sword and a dagger, is when you pick up the Knife of the Undermountain King. And there's a couple of reasons why. One, this reduces the roll we need for a critical hit, and as a rogue, a swashbuckler as well, critical hits is kind of the name of the game. It's going to do a lot of damage. And then, cherry on top here, this is a weapon enchantment +2. So when you get the Knife of the Undermountain King, yeah, I would take off Baldur here, put this on, and then any dagger in your offhand I think will do. So that's kind of your weapons squared away. Again, we're focusing more on the melee side of Swashbuckler, so whatever range weapon you can slot in here, anything will work. Next up, the chest piece here. There's only one I think you need to go for, and that is the Graceful Cloth. This is going to increase our dexterity by 2 to a maximum of 20. So right here in Act 1, our dexterity is already at 20. That's amazing. Also, we get Cat's Grace as a enhanced ability, meaning we get advantage on all of our dexterity checks. So if you're lockpicking, you'll get advantage there. Perfect for a rogue. Now for our rings here, I think you just go with the Caustic Band for a little bit more acid damage. And then the other ring is the Smuggler's Ring. So this is going to help out our sleight of hand and our stealth, but keep in mind, it's going to be -1 to charisma. So that's why it's at 15 right now. So if you're going into combat, maybe swap this out for something else like Crusher's Ring or something like that to keep, that 16 modifier for your charisma. But these are the key pieces of equipment I would be, looking out for your swashbuckler, and then everything else just kind of fill as need. And actually, as a bonus, we did end up giving Astarion for a bow, more specifically the Titan String Bow. So we had the Knife of the Undermountain King and then the Club of Hill Giant Strength as our offhand. So what this combination does is it sets our strength to 19, and then the Titan String Bow takes our strength modifier into effect when it does damage. We were trying to focus more on melee, but when we were kind of forced to use a bow, this combination here, just fit right into Astarion's lap, and it was really good. And it's all in Act 1 still. So now let's move on to the Act 2 leveling. Now for Act 2 leveling at level 8 here, we get our next feat. And now when it comes to a rogue here, our initiative is already pretty good. So alert, that's an option, but we actually were a little cheeky, and we went with Magic Initiate Warlock. Now why are we doing this? Well, sometimes, like we said, with our dirty tricks, that'll proc our rakish sneak attack, meaning our action is just left to do a normal swing. Well, how can we make that a little bit better? By taking Magic Initiate Warlock. That's how, of course. And that's because of Booming Blade. So we gave ourselves Booming Blade, and then the other choice here was just kind of whatever. We might have taken Minor Illusion or Blade Ward. I don't know, one of these two, but the important thing here is Booming Blade. This is a cantrip. We can use it once per turn. So this is really handy, especially again in those situations where, say, Flick of the Wrist or Santos procs our Rakish Sneak Attack. Then we can follow up with a Booming Blade, which is excellent. For the spell, we just went ahead with Hellish Rebuke here, and this is mostly for an option when it comes to a reaction to do a little bit of damage. But that's our level 8 feat out of the way. Let's move on to level 9. Level 9 and looking so fine. What do we get at level 9? We get my favorite Panache, or as you guys like to say, Panache. Potato. Panache. That joke is never gonna get old. Anywho, this is okay. This is a class action that'll put Charm on a target. I'm gonna be honest, in our entire playthrough, we didn't use Panache once. Not once. And that's mostly because Panache is very, I would say, niche. So either they're gonna have disadvantage or they're gonna become charmed. Again, as our action, I would rather be using Booming Blade, which we picked up at level 8, or just our normal Rakish Sneak Attack. So Panache, again, didn't find many uses for it. Let's move on to level 10. Now at level 10, we pick up our 3rd feat as a rogue, and we just went ahead and bumped up our dexterity to 20, because in Act 3, we're going to be changing out our chest piece. So we might as well just get our dexterity up to 20 and kind of prepare ourselves for that eventual upgrade, which I'm very excited to talk about. But let's go ahead. That's Act 2 leveling out of the way. Let's move on to the gear that we're going to be looking for in Act 2. Now for gear in Act 2 that I think are key to Astarion here, really there's actually just 2 pieces we gave to Astarion. That is the Cloak of Protection. A little bit helps out with survivability in his saving throws, and the other is the Callous Glow Ring. Again, a little bit more damage when we attack enemies that are illuminated. Probably swap this out for the Smuggler's Ring, unless we need to, succeed something like lockpicking. But there are some other pieces of equipment, like the flawed Helldusk gloves, that you could give to Astarion, but for our playthrough here, we gave those gloves to another character. So that's why you're not seeing me mention it here. We're just talking about the key pieces of equipment that we used on our playthrough, and it worked out, completely fine. Just don't ask what happened to Isabel. We don't talk about that. She just tried to get herself killed. This could be it. This could be it. This is it. She's dead. This is what I like to call fucked. Anywho, let's finish off with leveling in Act 3. Now for Act 3 leveling, probably just going to be the 2 levels here. At level 11, we pick up Reliable Talent, so our ability checks the skills. The lowest we can roll is a 10 from now on, which is, it's amazing, but skill checks are skill checks at this point. We have so much gear that is just buffing the crap out of us. Moving to level 12, we get our last feat, and we talked about it on the stream. Really, I would just go with Savage Attacker. You could probably take this at level 10 if you don't want to take ability improvement, but Savage Attacker, this is going to roll our attack dice twice, and we're going to take the highest results. This is a net positive for damage, and really helps us do some really chunky stabs with Astarion here. Now that is the leveling out of the way. Let's talk about all the great gear we're getting in Act 3 for Astarion. Look where we are. Back where we started the video. Now for the gear and equipment, I need to actually make an amendment here because we're on a Dark Urge playthrough and we are leaning towards the more evil side. So if you don't have the Dirge in your party, or you don't choose that as an origin character, some of this gear is going to be locked out to you unless you're, doing something like modding. So keep that in mind. Now for our helmet slot here, Mask of Soul Perception. This is going to give us a +2 to our attack rolls and our initiative. And we didn't take alert with our rogue here, so helping out with initiative, always a good thing. Now the cloak here, you technically can get this in Act 2, but we were using it on another character. At some point in Act 3, we decided to give it to Astarion, and honestly, probably should have given it to him back in Act 2, but this is going to basically make us invisible after we get a kill, which works out perfect for our Swashbuckler. Now the armor here, the ballast armor here, this really was a game changer. I didn't even think about this armor when we started this playthrough, but it's right there in the description. Aura of Murder. Enemies within 3 meters become vulnerable to piercing damage, unless they're immune to it. Also helping out with our initiative. But this is going to double our dagger strikes or our short sword strikes with Astarion. And the numbers get big, y'all. They get real big. We'll be showing a little bit of what I'm talking about in the gameplay section. Let's move on here. The gloves we went with are the Crater Flesh gloves here. Whenever you score a critical hit, we're going to deal additional force damage. Force damage is probably one of the best damage types in Baldur's Gate 3. Not a lot of people are immune or even resistant to it. Boots, I think you get these. You get these from Act 1. Boots are just kind of up to you. Now when it comes to your weapons, I think we have a lot of options. We have the Crimson Mischief here, and this is going to do more damage against targets with 50% hit points or fewer. Weapon enchantment +2, and then when you make an attack with advantage, we deal an additional 7 piercing damage. As a swashbuckler, attacking with advantage, really easy to come by. For our offhand, I went with Bloodthirst, and that's because of the improved critical there. So the roll we need for a critical hit is reduced by 1. And now this has an offhanded feature to it, but I didn't really think that was all too important. I thought Crimson Mischief there had a better main hand option than Bloodthirst here, because our armor already makes enemies vulnerable to piercing damage. So to have Bloodthirst in our main hand, I didn't think it was necessary. Now, if you're on like a good playthrough, you don't have a dirge in your party, maybe put Bloodthirst in your main hand, because you're not going to have access to this armor unless you sacrifice a certain elephant. Now, there are some other weapons that are pretty good options too, like the Dalar Amorous here. When we score a critical hit, we're going to do 7 additional damage. And you'll start to notice, so with our bows here, we have the Vicious Short Bow. When you land a critical hit, 7 more damage. But then we have the Dead Shot, which reduces the roll we need for a critical hit by 1. This is kind of the yin and yang when it comes to equipment in Act 3. It's like, okay, do you want to crit more often, or do you want to hit harder when you crit? That's just going to kind of be up to you. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. So just pick whatever is the best for you. But that is the gear out of the way. Let's talk about some tadpole choices. Now, a bonus section, the Illithid powers. We really don't ever talk about these with our builds, but we did have Astarion eat a couple tadpoles. Really, that was to grab Luck of the Far Realms. This is going to be a 100% guaranteed crit once per long rest. Other than that, something like Psionic Backlash here, this is another reaction that will do psychic damage depending on a spellcaster, the level of spell that they're using. So that's really good. Black Hole here, this is just kind of fun to use. And then for a movement ability, Fly is really helpful for a rogue. So those are some key Illithid powers I think you should take with Astarion, because he's already willing to basically eat a couple tadpoles, no questions asked. Now for the gameplay section, we actually have some enemies we left over in our dirge run, so super bonus here. But let's do a rakish sneak attack, and let's see how much damage we can do here against this ogre. Just a big stab here. Holy shit. Let's look at the log on that one. Yeah, you can see there we did 85 damage with our sneak attack, plus some necrotic damage, plus some acid damage, plus the force damage. That is over 100 damage on one attack. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But we're not done yet. We found some winged horrors. We're gonna throw some sand at them. A little bit of pocket sand. So that opens up the fight. There's actually another one down there. They're a little surprised. We'll do another rakish sneak attack. Chunky bit of damage, 42 damage, just base with our weapon. Amazing. Now our cloak came into effect there. Obviously made us invisible. The other, was that a winged horror? Surprised. So they lost their turn there. Can't even see us. Now one of the beautiful things about taking the Illithid powers, Fly, really just helps out our mobility without having to use any action. So we can fly right on down there. Get a little bit closer. Now for as far as like elixirs and items, really I think the elixir of Bloodlust is just default the best. Unless you're using an elixir of some sort of resistance, I think the elixir of Bloodlust, it really helps out a rogue, because admittedly we don't have a way to get extra attack. We're not doing any multi-classing. So this elixir of Bloodlust, I think it works best for rogue here. We're gonna go ahead and do another sneak attack. Yeah, I mean that's the bread and butter. That's how you play rogue. It's really simple and really effective. I was actually very surprised on how well Astarion played with our dirge playthrough. So again, just really basic overview here. Open up with a dirty trick. This is going to give you advantage. Follow up with a rakish sneak attack. If your rakish sneak attack procs with something like flick of the wrist, if you're attacking a humanoid or somebody who has a weapon, then you can follow up with booming blade. Just rinse and repeat until everything's dead. We have our lifted powers over here, but mostly we're just sticking toward fly, and then black hole if there's like it's like our only, almost like our only like AoE move that we have, and it's really effective. But this is like super late game. We did try to ascend Astarion, but the Cazador fight kind of went tits up. So if you really want to make this like Omega strong, try to ascend Astarion and do better than us in some regards. Alright y'all, that is the build, that is the video. This is the first out of our party. I think next up we'll talk about the barbarian in the room, Karlach. But anyways, I will see you guys next time. If you've made it this far, I appreciate the hell out of you. Peace and take care.